Welcome back. This is episode 2 of The Eagle Experience. I'm your host, Zach Roach, 8th grader here at Chestatee Academy. And on today's episode, we're here with Katie Rountree. Now, Katie, you've been here at Chestatee for a long time. You have a very unique experience being both a student, a teacher, and now the parent of Wyatt Rountree, 6th grader here at Chestatee. So go ahead and take it away.
All right. Yes. So I was a 7th grader when the school opened back in 1999. I went to 7th and 8th grade here, and then I had to go back to North Hall while they built the high school. So I moved to Chestatee High School in 10th grade and graduated in 2005. Flash forward a few years, knew I wanted to be a teacher. My husband was in the military, so we had to move to Northern Virginia, right outside of D.C., where I taught, I had my first teaching job there. When we moved back, I knew I wanted to be here. I didn't get the job right away. There were no openings right when we moved back, but it took me a year and a half. There was an opening, and I moved here to start teaching 6th grade language arts in 2015, I believe. And then I taught here until 2021, right after COVID. So 1 year after COVID, I was here. And then I knew that I had some goals to do some different things in education. And so Ms. Kogod actually pushed me to look at different things in education. And so I took a job as an instructional coach at West Hall Middle School, which was really hard. I love my job. I love what I do. But leaving here, which was my family, was really hard. It wasn't something that I took lightly. I put a lot of thought into it. For sure. But I'm glad I moved, but I do miss it here. But now my son's here. So
right.
That makes it okay.
So tell us, if you will, a little bit about, for those who picked up on it, the family heritage here in the local area.
Yes. So my dad was born and raised in Sardis. My grandparents had the first local little grocery gas station in the Sardis community, and it was called Eberhardt's Grocery. Then it turned to H&H, and it's still there. I'm not sure what the gas station is called now, but it's on Dawsonville Highway, where Sardis and Dawsonville Highway intersect.
Is it the Chestatee Food Mart?
I don't know what it's called now, but it's right beside Papa's Pizza. Okay. Which is where...
Oh, it's that one.
Yes,
okay.
My family's restaurant was, and working there and interacting with the families there, I got to know so many people in this community. And that's why I'm still a part of this community.
Right. And that's wonderful. I mean, we think a lot of times here in Gainesville that we're really such a big community, but once you get really deep into it, you realize that we're really all related somehow, or we know each other really closely.
Yes.
Now, let's get into it with some action. Can you share some of the most memorable experience during your entire Chestatee experience? This can be as a student, as a teacher, or now as a parent even.
Well, I'll start with some of my most memorable experiences as a student. Thinking back, I can remember going on the National Honor Society trip to Washington, D.C.
Oh, yeah.
And that was so much fun. I got to leave my parents for the first time and go on a trip with some friends and some of my favorite teachers, and we had a great time. I had lots of memories playing basketball and learning how to be a team player with my new team. I didn't know a lot of the girls. We were coming from very different not very different, but a lot of different schools, and we didn't know each other. We didn't play park and rec ball together because they were on the other side of town. They were, West Hall at the time, and I was North Hall at the time. So we really had to get to know each other while we were playing. But we had so much fun. It was great. As far as like being a student and thinking about my classes, I actually had Ms Gerard for science and math. And I can remember her science class was one of the most interesting classes I was ever in. And I don't really like science. We dissected some of the most disgusting things. And she told us some of the most random facts. One of the facts was something about how many spiders and bugs you swallow in your sleep in a year. I can't remember the number, but that has stuck with me forever. And then another teacher that I have a lot of memories with was Miss Hayes, but she's Miss Chandler now. And we would race to get to her language arts class because if you were the first person to get your warm-up done, which was like editing a sentence, you got a Laffy Taffy, and you got to read the joke out loud. And who doesn't love a Laffy Taffy? I mean, that was the highlight of her day, right? So those are some of probably my most memorable moments as a student. And gosh, as a teacher, I have so many that involve my students, but also with other teachers. Probably one of my most favorite memories, and I love to see it pop up on my Facebook memories, is our football team they were playing in the championship, and the boys got to pick a teacher to give their jersey to.
Oh.
And that meant fun. So much. That was the first time we had ever done that as a school. Right. And Dylan Thompson gave me his jersey, and I also had another student named Vance give me his, and I cannot remember his last name, but I could see his face. I'm trying to think. It's not coming to me right now, but those two boys are some of my most favorite students. And so I told them, I'll wear yours half the day and then yours half the day. And then when we get to the game, I'll do one for the first half and the other one for the second half. And we didn't win that game. Oh. But seeing our community come together and all of our students there, we were playing at Davis. So it wasn't like it was close. Mm-hmm. Everybody went there and supported the boys. And it was just an incredible time. I will never forget that. And on that same day, I won a Jackson EMC grant to buy some books for my classroom. And I was so excited because my students were going to get to pick these books. Right. And we had been hoping to win this grant, and I did. And the students got to see me get that award. And I think they were just as excited as I was. And let's see.
Well, if I could stop you right there, as you mentioned, Ms Gerard, which if you're not familiar with, go ahead and check out our first episode was with Ms Suzanne Gerard, who is currently the Director of Secondary Education. I think I got that title right.
Yes.
And Ms Hayes. Now, you mentioned, which you were an ELA teacher, correct?
Yes.
And now, do you think some of the experiences you had with Ms Hayes affected how you taught and why you became an ELA teacher?
For sure. One thing, we were reading The Outsiders in 8th grade, and she always wanted me to be the person to read aloud to the class because she thought I was a good reader. And I never viewed myself as a good reader. And so that was a very big confidence booster for me. But I also think that, or I know that Ms Gerard played a huge role in that. I came to school to be social. I love to see my friends. I love to play sports, but I was kind of one of those kids. School wasn't super easy for me. Probably would have been if I wasn't so social. But Ms Gerard was probably the first teacher that I can really say I knew believed in me. And she was not going to let me settle for just mediocre. Right. She pushed and pushed. And seeing how much she invested in me, I knew I wanted to do that for, students in the future.
Right.
So that also really helped me know that I wanted to be a teacher.
And now going back again, I know we're jumping through a lot of timelines here with such a unique experience. But you mentioned your team. You play basketball, correct? Mm-hmm. Now, as you also mentioned earlier, you had to swap between a lot of schools because it was just that time around the turn of the century, from the 1900s to the 2000s, and Chestatee was a brand new little baby. So tell us about, do you think having such wonderful teachers and students to be around, do you think that really made you fit in here?
Oh, for sure. And to be completely honest, a lot of the parents in the community were kind of weary about a new school being built. What was it going to be like? What kind of reputation was it going to have? Do we want our kids to go to a new school? There was a lot of back and forth on, do we have other options? Do we have other places our kids can go to school? And it wasn't just my parents, it was many parents in the community. But they all kind of joined in and said, let's give it a try. And I think that was a very good choice because this school, it's very unique. A community was immediately built. My dad got in a hunting accident when I was an 8th grader, which caused my mom and dad to be gone for a long period of time because he had to go and learn how to deal with his new disability that he had, and my mom had to be with him so that she could learn how to take care of him. He fell out of a tree stand and was paralyzed from the waist down. So a life changer, right? Mm-hmm. And the teachers here stepped up and supported us in every way possible. My coaches stepped in. They were going to make sure I was at practice. If I needed a ride home, they were going to make sure I had a ride home. And that's how all the teachers were as well.
Right.
So it's been a community from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Still are, and really, even more than a community, a family. Mm-hmm. So still with student life, this is going to be a really interesting one. how was student life back then, and even more interesting things like slang terms and how you acted as kids and everything as a student?
Well, I think it was probably very different than it is now, or I know it was. We didn't have cell phones. I think I got my first cell phone when I was in ninth grade. Yeah, pretty sure I got my first cell phone when I was in ninth grade. So you had to, call the home phone and to see if a friend could come over. And we didn't have as many slang terms as y'all do now. I think the extent of ours was, cool beans. Let's see, the bomb diggity. That's probably about it. I think a lot of your slang terms come from what you find on the internet. We didn't really have that option when we were middle schoolers.
All right, now you kind of already mentioned some people, but if you want to mention more, are there any friendships that made your whole Chestatee experience really just better and even more like a family?
Oh, for sure. I've already mentioned Ms Gerard's class one time. Another time that class comes to mind is I was in a math class with none of my friends, and I wasn't happy. I didn't want to be in that math class. Part of middle school is your friend groups. So I was kind of forced to make new friends, and I met my best friend to this day, Kelly Martin, in that class. And what's really cool is we have maintained our friendship. We were at each other's weddings. She was in my wedding. Our kids are the same age. She lives right down the street from me. She's a teacher, so we love to talk about teacher stuff. But that friendship was made here while I was at Chestatee. There are a couple other girls that I play basketball with that we were really good friends, and we still stay in touch, but they don't live here, so we're not as close as I am with Kelly. One of the girls, her mom was a principal here when the school opened. Jennifer Osborne. She's Jennifer Jameson now, but we were great friends, and it was really cool to be able to have such a close relationship with our principal at the time.
Yeah. Really. Now, as we kind of progress through the timeline of your experience here at Chestatee, what motivated you to come back as a teacher? We kind of already talked about your experiences here with some other wonderful teachers who taught you, but why come back to Chestatee and why teach ELA and everything?
We've already talked about the community piece of this, but that saying you hear all the time, once a War Eagle, you're always a War Eagle? Mm-hmm. It's really true. Anybody who knows me knows that the War Eagle blood runs thick. While I'm not a teacher here, I'm still a huge fan of Chestatee. I knew this is where I wanted to be. I wanted to teach the kids that I knew when they were little. I wanted to have, different multiple generations of kids coming through, which I did, which was awesome. That's what I really wanted when I came back to Chestatee. It was an easy decision. That I knew I always wanted to come back here.
Mm-hmm. Now, as we've kind of already mentioned a lot actually, we hear a lot about family here at Chestatee. How do you feel that Chestatee is a family to you? And let's get back to Wyatt. Do you think he feels like it's family too, and how?
So I have, kept a very close relationship with many of the teachers that I worked with here. I'm still their cheerleader. They're still mine. We, text back and forth. We still have dinner together. They invite me to baby showers, wedding showers, retirements. We bounce ideas still off about, hey, if you were going to teach this in language arts, how would you do this? Or what story would you use? Or what video? We're texting all the time about that kind of stuff. For Wyatt, he would ride the bus here from Sardis when I worked here. And he has been up and down these halls a million times. This is home for him too. But as any middle school boy is, they don't want any extra eyes on them than they have to have, right? So I think for Wyatt, deep down, he really appreciates it and he likes it because he knows if he has any issues or needs help with anything, there are multiple people he feels comfortable that he can go to. But I do also remind him, you have lots of eyes on you. A lot of times I know all the news before he ever gets home. And he's like, how do you know that? So I remind him, remember, I know a lot of people there.
Now, still speaking of Wyatt, how do you feel that your perspective as a parent now has changed in friendships and to Chestatee? And how has things really evolved as you progress on through being a parent here?
I think being a parent of a Chestatee student for me has been very easy. as any middle school boy is. They want to come home and complain about how much work they do and how there's no purpose to it and yada, yada, yada. But I know the heart of the teachers here, and I know that they really do want to give the kids the best that they can. And so I'm able to be like, okay, I know you don't want to do this, but here is why. And I'm always reminding him, like, you have the best teachers, like, it's just part of middle school. You got to do the work. I know you'd rather play video games, but it's not happening. So I think it's made me be able to support him, but also support the teachers.
Now, tell us about your future aspirations. Is there anything you see yourself doing here or differently in your current line of work?
Possibly. I am kind of, looking at leadership opportunities. But right now, the most important thing to me is being there for my kids. And I'm a firm believer that doors open when they're supposed to, and they're closed when they're supposed to be closed. And if an opportunity were to arise to go into a leadership position, I would definitely explore that option. But the time that I have with my kids right now while they're little is really important to me.
Right.
And so I think I am where I'm supposed to be, and we'll just see what the future holds.
Now, as things coming to a close, wrapping up, would you like to say anything else about your Chestatee experience or about you or Wyatt or anything?
I just think that being War Eagle was one of the greatest things that you can be. I still think all the time when I'm talking to Wyatt and he's, complaining or grumbling or whatever, I can always take it back to having character, courage, and commitment. And I think that is something that is instilled in every War Eagle that comes through here. And honestly, even the feeder schools, like my daughter's at Sardis, and I feel like she already knows that. Like, I'm a War Eagle. I have to have character, courage, and commitment. And we're always telling her that as well. And so I just feel like this is a very unique place. And whether or not students realize it, they are very lucky to be able to go to such a school like this.
Right. Well, thank you for watching. This was episode 2 of the Eagle Experience. If you enjoyed it, be sure to share and subscribe. This was Katie Rountree, and I'm Zach Roach. So until next time, thanks for joining us for another Eagle Experience.